I think what's so special and unique about New World is the opportunity to get to work with so many fantastic musicians and coaches, especially starting with the artistic director and music director, Michael Tilson Thomas. Um, Getting the experience to work with people like that in a very close setting and directly is unique, I think, to New World. I even think as you go on into more professional situations that you don't necessarily get that experience working with people like that closely, who really take the time and interest to work with you on developing, all the things that young musicians need to develop, whether or not it's their sound or musicality or interpretation skills, whatever it is. I don't really think you. I've worked in professional orchestras, and it's very rare to see a conductor really kind of take the time that's available at New World, and I think that has a real shaping on a real effect on moving forward as a professional musician. That's something that's going to be with me for the rest of my career. I actually can't even answer that question. It's something I just started doing as a youngster, and I always kind of composed here and there. And then when I went to college, I started just writing things for my own recitals, and then people started asking me to write things for their recitals. And then yeah, just one thing led to another, and it's kind of like every time I come composing hasn't been something I do all the time. I've really kind of spent my life more as a performer, but now every time I come back to composing, the projects keep on getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the groups get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's been a great learning process for me because I'm really kind of untrained as a composer. I'm really a self-taught composer. I met David, and as a timpanist, David is really interested in trying to get more pieces written for the setup, with including the tenor timpani. And uh, my professional schedule as a performer really didn't allow me the time to. I just we talked about it for years, and I just never had a time to wrap my head around it. And writing something for solo timpani, um, sonically, even as a timpanist, I find to be a real challenge because melodically it still has its limitations, especially compared to other instruments. The tenor timpani are only set in nine pitches. That's just fixed the entire time. And then the drums that are on the ground, really only four of those drums are adjustable in terms of the pitch. So, tonality options are really kind of limited by the instrument itself. So getting your head around a solo timpani piece takes a lot. At least for me, it does. And I think after the time I wrote the last kind of timpani solo thing I had written, I said, never again. I don't want to do this again. It's too difficult to think of. There's only so many combinations I can come up with. But David kept on asking about a piece, and knowing that I was a timpanist, he really wanted me to look into the idea of writing for the tenor timpani, which was very interesting because as a composer, this was really the first time, especially for a solo instrument, that I was writing for an instrument that I was completely unfamiliar with. I mean, I understood the principle of them. I understood that they were up here, kind of set up above the timpani, and I understood that I could only write for nine pitches, and I had to decide specifically what those nine pitches were going to be before I even started working on the piece. And that really kind of cast a framework for how the piece was going to be written. Inspiration wise, I'd love to say that, like, the sky and the sun and the moon and all these things really inspire me. I mean, I have a process of sitting down and trying to think of themes and putting them all together. Um, Really lately, in terms of composing, especially that I've been working on bigger projects lately, this project, orchestra projects, I've really actually found it very helpful that I really just kind of write for two-stav piano first, which I know is kind of a throwback to the way a lot of music was written before. Um, but for me, it really kind of helps my ear get around the melodic material and harmonic material that I want to work with before I set out to orchestrate it. And sometimes this has its limitations, and sometimes it's a good thing. But that process of working that way seems to work really well for me. I think as a composer, possibly, uh, that it's opened up your my ear to tonality and harmony more than it was before. A lot of times timpanists get very pigeonholed in the pitches that they're playing, so that all the tonality of the music that's going on in their own head rotates around the kind of four pitches, because we typically just have four drums, rotate around the four pitches that are in front of us. And a lot of the time, that's not how music was conceived. So as a composer, that's interesting. And also now, especially that I've started to take on, I've started working on orchestral works too. It's interesting for me when I start writing an orchestra timpani part, how I go about putting that in. Because in a lot of ways, I know it works on the instrument and I know it doesn't work on the instrument. And I guess sometimes I think my own personal timpani writing in the orchestra sense can be kind of conservative, unlike the piece for David.